start the Redwood Community College District's April 7th, 2015 meeting, and we will start with a flag salute to those serving our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So today we're going to change the agenda up for anybody that doesn't know. We are going to go into closed session first today after general public comments and brief announcements related board activities due to scheduling conflicts with our consultant on the search for a new president. We're going to go in and we will come back out into open session at 2 p.m. And is there anybody that has any public comments on any agenda items? Seeing none, we will ask for announcements of any related board activities, member comments. Seeing none, we are going to go into closed session until 2 o'clock. Thank you. At the end of open session, back into closed session again. We are not complete with our work. So now we'll pick the agenda up at item 1.3, board committee reports. Is there anybody that would like to offer a report? Trustee Matthews?
I would just like to say that Michelle sent out the board evaluation survey yesterday by email. If you haven't received it for some reason, please let her know. And that survey is due back by Friday, April 17th. And it also went out to quite a list of college faculty and staff.
Thank you. Others? We'll move on to 1.4. Board business is authorizing participation in the CCCT Board of Directors, that we cast votes for individuals to be on that. There's a list of 10 this year, and Trustee Biggin is our representative to this board, and I've asked her to consult with Kathy, President Smith, on making these votes, and if there's anybody that would like to add input, please provide that to one of those two members. I think that they'll do a good job on their decisions.
I move approval.
If, all in favor?
Aye.
Not in favor? Thank you. We'll move on to item 2, consent calendar. Is there anyone that would like to remove an item?
I think I would like to move
2.5? Can we get a motion for the remainder?
I so move.
I second it.
I'm looking for approval of the consent calendar minus item 2.5. All in favor?
Aye.
Not in favor? Thank you. Trustee Matthews, would you like to bring your points up?
I believe that in the minutes for that meeting, in the report out from closed session, there was a report out about our search that's not included in the minutes. We reported out on the vote of the board to do the reference and site visit for a candidate.
Michelle might have to help me with this one, but we asked the attorney after that report out what should be included in the minutes.
The answer
And he
was-
said that neither of those needed to be included in
Okay.
those minutes because they were not officially required, that we just reported out to let the public, the constituents know what the vote was.
Okay,
Is that right, Michelle?
okay, good, thank you.
I'm looking for a motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor of approving 2.5?
Aye.
Not in favor? Action carries. We'll move on to item 3.1, approve monthly financial status report. President Smith.
I don't think I have anything to add here. Sorry. Vice President Lindsay did put in his cover sheet some information about projecting the ending fund balance based upon some pay restorations that we have been working on. So that is calculated into the numbers there. Of course, the revenue's been increased to reflect the governor's office budgeting new numbers and the increase in revenues that the state has been getting. And so with the pay restoration estimates, we are showing an ending balance at the end of the year of just slightly over 6%, 6.06%. So, and VP Lindsay's not in the room to answer questions, but you can ask. We'll try.
Questions? All in favor? Aye. Not in favor? We'll move on to 3.2, approve curriculum changes. President Smith?
I think Keith would take any questions on this. I was excited to see another associate degree in transfer there in agriculture.
For ag, yes.
Questions, comments? Looking for a motion? All in favor? Not in favor? Motion passes. 3.3, authorize President Superintendent to award bid for Mendocino Residence Hall Eureka Campus re-roofing project. President Smith.
We're just on a tight schedule on this one. We've got bids out, and we've got to get to work on the roof as soon as we get the information back from construction companies. So, just, thank you.
I'll second it.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Not in favor? We'll move on to 3.5, approve a pay reduction offset for salary
3.4.
3.4, approve
Stinted.
change proposal to transfer control of the Mendocino campus to the Mendocino College. And there's been an additional, the report was forwarded by email, and I'm assuming it's out front on the table?
On the website.
It's on the website, okay. Discussion?
Do you want me to say anything?
Oh, sorry, go right ahead.
Just a little bit of background there. We've been working closely with Mendocino College as well, and the substantive change proposals will go forward from both College of the Redwoods and Mendocino College about this particular issue. And we included in the change proposal a draft of the MOU that we're working on with College of the Redwood, or excuse me, with Mendocino College as well. And Barbara, we caught the date that you said, oh, Trustee Rice, sorry about that. We did correct that before we submitted it, so thank you very much for alerting us to that error, yeah. But I would take any questions.
Questions? Trustee Matthews?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to comment on the completeness and the extensive work that went into the whole report. It's quite detailed.
Well, that's thanks to our ALO, Dr. Angelina Hill, and our VP, Keith Snowflamer, Dr. Keith Snowflamer. They've put a lot of work into this. So.
Other questions? We are looking for a motion for,
I'll second it.
all in favor? Aye. Those not, motion carries. Okay, now 3.5, approve a pay reduction offset and salary restoration for unrepresentative employees.
So I know where Director Fielding is at the moment. So let me just speak on her behalf of this one. This is, we signed an MOU with the faculty union last week that restores pay for faculty represented by the union, both the full-time and the part-time. And we just this morning, I believe, reached agreement with CSEA, okay, I see in the back, to also have a similar pay restoration agreement. And so this agenda item covers all of the employees who are not covered by, or not represented by the CSEA or CRFO union. So these are all the managers, the confidentials. And so the information here was a little bit hard for me to read when I first read it, but it all has to do with we can only go to 6% in 1 year, and the other 0.5% would be offered after the beginning of next year to bring the confidentials up to full restoration.
Discussion?
So I think I just got a little tangled up in some of the language here. So in that first bullet, we refer to a one-time payout for all unrepresented. So that's administrators, confidentials, and managers.
Yes.
Right? And then the next bullet, we don't talk about a one-time payout. We talk about a one-time pay reduction offset. And I'm assuming that's the same as a one-time payout, or is that something?
The first bullet refers to going back to the beginning of this year. So we've already had our paychecks for the year 14-15. So that's a payout to make up for it because it's retroactive. Starting in the other 0.5% would just start, I guess, in next year.
But that is only applicable to confidentials?
Correct.
To managers and
Correct.
administrators?
Correct. The agreement was that confidentials and classified, I've got to look around because Ann's not here, would be fully restored because they all took a 6.5% reduction. So they would be fully restored. The faculty are not, and the managers and the administrators are not yet fully restored.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are part-time fully restored, John?
Part-time are fully
Okay. So the part-time faculty increase was 8%. So
Part-time faculty took an 8% salary concession, that's been eliminated back from the regular salary schedule, and full-time faculty took an 8.7% concession, and they had 6% of that reduced.
Okay.
So full-time faculty essentially have a 2.7% pay
Okay.
concession right now.
And so following that, the managers are on a 2% and the administrators on a 3%, because they originally took 8% and 9% respectively. So we're not back with everybody, but we're getting the part-time faculty, the confidentials, and the classified back to where they were before.
I appreciate it. I was just having a little trouble
I
tracking.
was too. I suggested a way to reword this, but then I was told we couldn't because it has to be exactly like this, so.
As long as it's all, everyone's getting back where they should be.
Yes.
Trustee Megan?
Yes.
I'm just, I think we've said this before, but I'm just really happy that we're able to do this. And again, want to give our board appreciation to faculty and staff and managers and everybody that have, participated in this transition that we went through. And, hopefully this will never occur in the future, but it's sure nice to see that we're all on the same team together. Thank you. And I want to make a motion that we approve this. Is this a resolution or a?
It
It's
is
just
an action item.
Okay, yeah, okay. I make a motion to approve.
Got a first and a second? Further discussion? I just want to say that 3.5 is a real tribute just to the whole College of the Redwoods community, including everybody, that we did what we needed to do, and I think relatively swiftly getting back to where we were. It's just a really positive thing. All in favor of 3.5? Aye. I'm not even going to ask for not in favor. We will now move on to 3.6, first reading of board policies, administrative procedures, numbered 3,000 through 7,000, and these are information only. So I'm going to read down through the list, and if anybody wants to stop and have discussion, please indicate. BP 3410, non-discrimination. AP 3410, non-discrimination. AP 3420, equal employment opportunity. AP 3430, prohibition of harassment. Go, Trustee Mullery.
Just a comment. I think, I'm sorry. think I raised this in an earlier discussion on some of these types of policies, and that is the training component. I'm just training, you know, the example I think I raised before, if I'm a faculty member and if a student comes to me and starts sharing with me something about a sexual assault, what is my obligation as a faculty member to report that? And how is that going to be communicated? So it would seem that something like that would be appropriate in an AP, but maybe it's elsewhere. So I just want to continue to raise that.
Okay, let me look into that.
Thank you. AP 3507, fire safety. And I will just make a quick note that it does say in this AP that the fire safety and escape routes are posted on campus and in the dorms and other places. AP 3520, local law enforcement. AP 3540, sexual and other assaults on campus. BP 3560, alcohol beverages on campus. AP 3560, alcohol beverages on campus. BP 3601, College of the Redwoods Foundation.
Question.
Trustee Biggin.
Turn this on. On the first page, page 141, point number 1, providing an instrumentality for financing and undertaking activities. That word instrumentality is kind of a mouthful. I wondered if a word like the vehicle, providing a vehicle, or if there's another word we could choose. Is there any reason we chose the word instrumentality?
This wording is taken right off of the foundation, either the bylaws or the articles of incorporation or whatever. We copied it off of the foundation language. So I think we would change both of them if we're going to change one. So I don't know, Bruce, if you know where that came from.
So ancient that we probably copied it from another college
Probably.
foundation.
So we could certainly take a suggestion for changing that, but then we would go to the foundation and suggest changing that to them.
I like
as
a
well.
word like vehicle, or provide it's a process or a vehicle. I know they're saying it's like it's an instrument, but it's just a simpler word.
I will research where that came from and see if it's something that we could change with the foundation's support there.
Yeah, let me see if I had another question. I wrote
Okay.
my notes here. Okay, number 2. This is just a punctuation question. I was wondering, after the word property, if that might be a semicolon, because we have this, and, kind of separating those two sections.
Okay?
Barbara's really the English major, so maybe she would have Trustee Rice's.
I'm a psych
Would maybe.
major.
Oh, well, you're good at noticing some of the mechanical things.
So where are you exactly?
Well, it's page 141, number 2, and the sentence reads, soliciting, receiving, investing, and managing money and property and using the funds, proceeds, and income generated to benefit the students of the district. So I was suggesting that, the first section, soliciting, receiving, investing, and managing money and property, then have a semicolon, and using funds and proceeds. And that might be another semicolon. And income, I'm not an English major, but
Okay,
it just
the-
seems
the
like,
semicolon would come after property.
Yeah.
And then take out the word and,
okay,
using the funds, proceeds, and income generated. Well, no, it's actually just fine the way it is.
okay. Doesn't need a semicolon there?
Doesn't
No?
really.
All right. I'm
But
not an
again,
English
I'm
person.
a psych major, not an English
Okay.
major.
Okay, thank you. AP 5502, Student sexual misconduct, including sexual violence. Trustee Mullery.
Yeah. A similar question, but I want to take us to pages 144 and 145, and where I think there could be some confusion. So if you go to 144, excuse me, it says that employees who have information regarding sexual misconduct should immediately contact the Title IX coordinator. So it goes to the point I made earlier that I think employees need to know that they have that responsibility. Where I think there could be some confusion is you go to 145, where I'm at 5.0, where it says the encouragement of reporting. And I understand what the writer is trying to say here, but I think if someone just read that bullet, they might be confused in terms of the obligations that are stated regarding employees' requirement to report. It says in that section, if an affected party requests his or her allegations be confidential, the district may be limited in its ability to respond to such allegations. And that's quite true. However, the employee, as far as I understand, still has the obligation to report it to the Title IX coordinator. And I'm afraid if someone read this out of context, they would think that if I'm the student going to Sally and say, I don't want you to tell anyone, they would think they wouldn't have to. So I think that needs to be clarified.
Okay, and match what it says on 144,
Well,
or,
I mean, both statements are true,
Right.
but if they're read out of context, I think it would be confusing.
okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you. BP 7150, evaluation. AP 7160, professional development. BP 7235, probationary period classified employees. BP 7240, confidential employees.
I had a question.
Trustee Rice?
Question about this along with the AP. And the BP at the very last says,
What page are you on?
163. Thank you. That the terms and conditions, okay, will be in the AP. So the AP should address not only procedures for evaluation, but also the rules regarding leaves, transfers, and reassignments. And when I look at the AP, it does talk about leaves and benefits being the same as confidential employees, but it doesn't really address reassignment or transfers. And I thought perhaps we should make that more clear.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if, as a board, we want to talk about what the issues would be there with a confidential employee on a reassignment or a transfer.
Okay. Well, without, I don't know, Ann, whether that means something to you, the reassignment part of that. The BP refers to the AP, but then it's not in the AP on reassignment. So we can bring something back to the next one if that's your preference.
Okay. Other questions or comments on BP 7240 or AP 7240? We will move on then to BP 7262, management performance evaluation. AP 7262, management performance evaluation. BP 7340, leaves. AP 7340, leaves. Trustee
I
Bingham?
have a question. On page 169, we refer to pregnancy leaves. On 173, the reference is maternity. Do we want to be consistent, or is there a difference between a pregnancy leave versus a maternity leave?
Not that I know of. I'm gonna guess on 169 where it says pregnancy leave and it cites the ed and government code sections there, that's probably what it says in the code. And perhaps on 173, it's not based upon the code language. I don't know. I'm looking at Ann. It's probably right. So we should change. What's the best term?
Where I've seen it is family
Family
leave.
leave, yeah.
That's more complicated.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that means something different.
But they're talking about, on page 173, a temporary disability leave, in that, in parentheses, they have maternity.
I think it would be pregnancy, but that's just my thought.
Why don't we look into the legalities of that?
I'm way out of my range.
Because, I mean, it's the pregnancy that creates the disability, not the maternity that creates the disability.
We will check the legal.
Yeah, it does refer to some things that technically would follow the pregnancy, which is maybe why maternity is used. I mean, it talks about complications and recoveries and,
Okay,
Yeah,
BP
okay.
7162, promotion. AP 7163, professional staff development leave. BP 7241, confidential staff probationary period. BP 7243, release time for confidential staff. BP 7511, consensual relationships. That will end the first reading of 3.6. We'll move on to 3.7, which is an action item, second reading.
Question, Russ?
Yes.
Question, if I may.
Okay, Colin.
Assuming that these first readings and the ones that brought second reading have all been by the attorneys and they have approved the language and consistency with the law and code, et cetera.
Not all of them we take to the attorneys, but many of them were written by our attorneys, but it doesn't mean that they're always consistent in their language either.
You know, a caveat that I like to put in is that, you know, when I'm voting for these, I'm voting for them on the assumption that someone with a higher pay grade than me has said that this is consistent with state law, federal law, education code, and if it comes out that we are not, then I just want to be on the record.
Well, one of the things that we use to complete our policies is the league's policy service and the templates there. And College Council has found in more than one case that the league's templates may not be always consistent. So we try, but when you catch something like that we can then research, then we'll make it right. But, yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
Okay, item 3.7, second reading of board policies. BP 2325, teleconferencing.
Yeah, I
Trustee
just,
Rice?
yeah,
But-
okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Well,
President Smith?
I just wanted to remind the board that the BP is in your packet, but the AP, which is in the 2000s and should have a second read by the board, was sent at a later time from Michelle. We inadvertently left it out of the packet, and I believe that AP is the one that you were questioning last month in March, so I'm
And there's a copy in everybody's desk.
good. There's a copy at your table.
And that's
Okay.
AP 2325. right?
2325 AP. Yes.
So BP 2325 or AP 2325, is there any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have
Trustee
some
Rice.
comments. You know, I recognize that teleconferencing can be a hardship on those of us in the room, that it's difficult sometimes to hear and get full participation from the person on the telephone. But I think having a teleconferencing policy that is more permissive than what this AP is suggesting for sure, it actually encourages more participation of the full board. So if a person can't be present, the full board can be present with that person teleconferencing. And it actually also provides more community access because a person participating in Del Norte, for instance, would then be at a venue that would also permit people in the community to participate in the board meeting as well, which they usually cannot do because the board member is here in Eureka. And it's also a cost savings. So that generally, I totally agree that board members should be committed to coming to our regular meetings and do whatever they can to make that happen. But I think we're really tying our hands when it comes to a special board meeting. And there was a time when we had a number of those called with very short notice. And if we say you have to be in the district at the time of participating and you have to give 7 days notice, we're not going to be able to have participation perhaps even of a quorum on those special board meetings. And sometimes those special board meetings have lasted a half an hour. You know, they've been on a specific topic, but it was urgent, had to get a decision made by the whole board. And to have somebody drive in an hour in order to participate with that meeting, it's not cost effective. We're paying money and time. And as I've said before, about the only person that's really going to be able to take advantage of this is myself. Because in all other instances, you're talking about a person who has the time for the meeting, but doesn't have time to drive from their location into Eureka for the meeting. So most people are not going to be in that situation. So I would advise against this AP in particular, and also the idea of completely discouraging a person from participating by teleconference, as though if they do that, they're creating some sort of a, adverse situation for the world. And it just seems to me that we've gone overboard on this policy in AP.
President Smith?
Something, Trustee Rice, that you just brought up that would make sense to me as well is, depending upon what this board decides, number 1 on the AP says at least 7 days notice in advance of the meeting. But if it is a special meeting, Michelle, that one so maybe that one could be changed. It could be 7 days for a regular meeting, or 2 days or something for a special meeting, so that would give Michelle time to get the agenda out within 24 hours of a special meeting. So we could cut that time down. And depending upon whether the board wants the within the district in there or not, there would be a slight change in both the BP and the AP. The third paragraph of the BP says within the district, and number 2 of the AP says within the boundaries of the district. So one of the things I wanted to point out was that there is another instance in here where the board is taking a more restrictive action than the law, and that's on closed session, because the law does say that you can have teleconferencing used for closed session, and the board decided they didn't want to do that. So at the point when you were talking about this last, which was at a workshop quite a while back, we also had the conversation within the boundary. So it doesn't matter either way to me. I'll just have to change both of these if the board decides that's what they want. So.
Other comments, questions? Trustee Biggin?
Personally, I would prefer that we not be quite as restrictive as this current AP is suggesting. And I did notice in our current issue of the Trustee Quarterly that comes out from, this is from the National ACCT? Yeah. They had an article on teleconferencing, and in the conclusion, they said it's the board's responsibility to assess whether interactive teleconferencing technology will serve as an effective tool for full trustee participation in the college. And I think Barbara's making, for some of us that have a distance to drive, it would be nice to have the option, especially for a special meeting that has not a lengthy agenda, to be able to call in for that, to have that option. Not that we are leaving the district, but just in terms of more efficient use of our time. and less expense to the district because of the mileage involved in the reimbursement for mileage, and when some trustees' situations, it might even include lodging. It would be nice to have the flexibility.
Others? Trustee Matthews?
I'm just going to echo what Trustee Rice and Trustee Biggins said. I think there are times when a 4-hour drive for a 1-hour meeting doesn't make a lot of sense if we can, accommodate the rest of our needs on, some special times especially.
Trustee Imad?
Thank you, President Ross. I personally have no problem with trustees from Del Norte, Mendocino, and Hoopa participating from the campus out there, and but I would have problem with out-of-state, on vacation, on board a boat or in a vacation house and wherever to participate at the board meeting, and I would have problems with closed session. Brown Act is very specific, who is in the room, and when you're away, you don't know who is next door that can hear what is going on. And so, but as far as trustees for short meetings or whatever, participating from their home base, by all means, I have no problem with that.
Trustee Capini?
Doesn't this policy give them that right? So what's the argument?
Restate your position, Trustee Rice, please, because now I am becoming confused.
Well, we are requiring a 7-day notice for one. And in terms of health and safety, a person may feel well enough to participate at a board meeting over the phone, but would not want to come in and be contagious to the rest of us. So to me, that 7-day rule is not necessary, although I understand it needs to be there at least at the time it's posted. We need to know at that point. And I disagree that it needs to be in the district. I think we're being overly restrictive. And if a board member is willing to give up part of their vacation time in order to attend a board meeting, I think it's more important that we have participation of the full board than it is that a person is attending from India. I don't think that matters. What matters is if the connection is clear enough, and we've covered that in this policy. And it's the special meetings that come up that we're going to tie our own hands and not have quorum when we need one, and we're not at that point going to be able to change a board policy quickly enough to deal with the urgency of a meeting, a special meeting that comes up.
President Smith?
You mentioned quorum. I just want to make it clear that a quorum of the trustees do need to be in the district.
Right.
So we'd have to have that many in the district at all times.
So I guess what we need to do is separate this one out, and I guess I'm looking for a motion for BP 2325, whether approve it as written, amending the 7-day rule for special board meetings, approving it that way, or not approving, a motion not to approve it and send it back for further review. Does that sound correct?
I wouldn't do further review. It's either yes or no.
Okay.
I have to change it.
All right, that's fine. So is there a motion to proceed with BP 2325 as written?
I'll second it.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So will we also have an opportunity to vote again with the, what I actually saw as a relatively friendly amendment to change it from 7 days to 48 hours for special meetings? Or is that something entirely?
That's AP, which is not on
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm
No.
on the AP.
That's okay.
Okay,
Okay, but we should have the AP on there.
We'll ask that on a separate vote, I guess. yeah.
Okay.
So can I, all in favor of BP 2325 as written? Aye. Not in favor.
No.
No.
So the vote's recorded, motion passes. Now we'll talk about AP 2325. Now, I think what trustee Mallory just mentioned is probably reasonable. Sounds like it's a pretty simple thing to do. Is there further discussion on AP 2325? Trustee Mallory, can I get you to make a motion with the,
Okay, I wasn't sure we needed to move on APs.
No, we don't.
Oh.
2000s you do.
Oh, 2000s. I should know this by now. I move approval with the revision to change one from 7 days to 48 hours.
I'll second it.
we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Not in favor? Motion passes. President Smith can always ask a question.
It's 48 hours for special board meetings. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, all right.
Okay, BP 4050 articulation. BP 5040 student records, directory information and privacy. BP 5300 student equity. BP 5530 student complaints. And I think that's it, isn't it? Yep. So we are looking for a motion to approve BP 4050 through BP 5530.
I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Not in favor? All right, so all of them move forward. We will now move on to item 3.8, and this is a review item of the ACCJC Annual Report and ACCJC Annual Financial Report. President Smith.
These two reports are required to be filed annually, and Dr. Hill prepares the annual report, and Vice President Lindsay prepares the annual financial report. And we're just presenting them to the board so you're aware of the information that the ACC is asking for and how we report back. So we'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions? Is Trustee Matthews?
Thank you. I don't have a question. I just once again would like to acknowledge the amount of work that goes into a report like this. And we're required to do it. It's very important that it be done well, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doesn't look like this is an action item. We'll move on to item 4, informational reports. 4.1, assessment update. President Smith.
I'm actually going to turn this one over to Dr. Hill, who will talk, who is co-chair of the assessment committee.
I turned it off. Dave Bizard wanted to be here, but he had to teach class, so his regrets. We wrote this report together. We realized that there are a sort of overwhelming number of learning outcomes at this institution, and the number has grown recently. And so what I wanted to do is start just briefly by providing an overview of the different types of learning outcomes. I think a simple divide is those that happen in the academic arena and then those that happen outside of the classroom. So the institution, the first work we did in assessment was just developing learning outcomes for our courses. And so we have sometimes called student learning outcomes, but the course learning outcomes were developed through curriculum for every one of our courses. And then we began developing learning outcomes for our programs. So those are our program level outcomes, or PLOs, and those are listed in the catalog for every program. And so instead of having to assess programs totally separately from the assessment of courses, we made it so that faculty don't have to do separate work to evaluate their programs. They just look and align their course outcomes with their program outcomes. They see where in our courses do our students demonstrate that those really important skills that we want them to get out of our programs, and then have discussions about those, and that provides a assessment dialogue for the level of the program. So the courses feed up into the programs, and that's what one of your diagrams show you. And then a very special type of program is our general education program. And so we have special outcomes for general education because they're so important for the bulk of our students. And to assess those, we hope to be changing our structure there to make it even less resource intensive. But we again look to the courses, the general education courses, and the outcomes that align with those to our gen ed outcomes, and bring faculty all together to discuss them and see what we can change, how we can improve, and keep track of that. Then outside of just the courses, we have outcomes in the student services areas, and they establish their own outcomes and assess those. And then one more level that's new is we have at the institution level outcomes that encapsulate all of the other outcomes. So what a student gets out of their experiences in the classroom, experiences with counselors, experiences, what they learn interacting with our financial aid department. So everything you think of their experiences as culmination. And to evaluate our institution learning outcomes, we look at all the other data, data from course level gen ed, all the achievement data that we have, to get a big sense of how we're doing, how well students are doing at attaining these overall outcomes. And so far, we've had a few dialogue sessions with faculty that I think have been very informative, where we've had really good conversation with faculty across disciplines and service staff and a variety of people there to talk about how well our students are doing. In terms of the report, I know you've seen before our activity, where we're at in terms of assessing all of our course and program and student service learning outcomes. You can see that for course and program, we're not at 100%, but we continue to get better. And I just want to urge you that we're on a 2-year cycle, but not everybody is on the same 2-year cycle. So we kind of gave people flexibility instead of getting everybody off track all at once. So because of that, we can be in 100% compliance, but not have these numbers go to 100%. And so I just don't want you to get alarmed at these numbers and think, oh my goodness, there's something really going wrong. We extended it out to 3 years, and in doing that, 94, so nearly 100% of all courses had at least an outcome assessed, and over 70% had all their outcomes assessed. And there's some issues where if a course doesn't get offered, very often it's difficult to assess in a 2-year window. So there's a lot of reasons why I think it's okay that we're not at 100% with such an aggressive 2-year cycle. So we are talking at the assessment committee about going to a 3 or 4 year cycle that we think would be a little bit more sustainable, although we feel that we're doing really well in terms of assessment activity. We do want to make sure that it's a meaningful process, and so the less reporting, just simple reporting, checking boxes, that kind of thing that people feel like they have to do, the better. And so extending it now that folks are starting pretty familiar with the process, we think might be okay. But so that's just something that we're talking about. And that's just within courses and programs. But it's student services. We have it down for gen ed and institutional outcomes. We're at 100%. So with that, are there any questions?
President Smith, do you have any comments?
No, I was looking at the charts. I didn't know if you had any comments on these charts. Are they?
The charts illustrate the relationship of the outcomes to each other, as well as how they relate to the program review process and resource requests. So really, within program review, the most important level of learning outcome assessment activity is at the program level. And so we really try to ask questions within program review where the programs can demonstrate how their programs have gotten better as a result of assessment activity, and really want to link that to resource requests as much as possible.
I think that's an important note, and when we evaluate other colleges, like I get the opportunity to do on my accreditation visits, that's where some people break down. I think we've done a good job of pulling the SLOs into the program reviews, and then using a lot of data from institutional research in the program reviews as well. So.
And you'll notice in the annual plan that we just talked about before this report, the ACCJC asks a lot of questions about, what are some successes of doing this assessment? How do the outcomes all relate to one another? So they're sort of showing what's really important, even beyond the standards. So.
Other questions?
I just want to add something just for historical perspective, because the student learning outcomes really became a requirement when the ACCJC passed or adopted the standards, the accreditation standards, in 2002. So this is 12 years in the making, and it has been a process throughout the state with getting student learning outcomes created or developed for all courses and all programs and for the institutions. And it sometimes had a hard time moving along in many of the colleges, and part of it just had to do with faculty doing things in a different way and staff members doing things in a different way than they had. But I think that all the faculty and staff here should be commended, because they've done an excellent job of putting it all together. We have a much more aggressive assessment schedule than many of the colleges I've visited, so I'm glad to hear that they're talking about perhaps loosening that up a bit. So this will continue with the newly adopted 2014 accreditation standards, and now a few more things have been added to those, so we'll continue making changes. But
Thank you. We'll move on to 4.2, progress on 2014-15 annual plan. President Smith?
Well, Angelina probably shouldn't leave because she's got the next two items here. So officially, Dr. Hill and I are co-chairs of the Institutional Effectiveness Committee, but that means that my name's on the paper and she does all the work. So we have the current annual plan that we've been working on, and there's information in your packet of each of the different planning action items and what the current status is of those action items, and I'm sure she can answer questions on any of those.
Questions? Well, I guess we can move on to 4.3, draft annual plan 2015-16.
If you want to give any intro comments.
This started with the Institutional Effectiveness Committee with the items. We started first with, as we did last year, with the things that hadn't been completed. from the following or prior plans. So we just moved those forward to this plan. Then we looked at our strategic and education master plans and looked for any major items in those that we hadn't addressed. And so some of the items are addressing some of that, and then took it out to different constituents. It just went to expanded cabinet for review, and so if there's any feedback that you have.
Thank you for the reports.
Okay, thanks.
4.4, center and site updates, President Smith.
Dr. Snowflamer supervises the centers and sites, and he wrote this report, so I think we'd be glad to answer questions.
Questions, comments? Trustee Rice?
I was expecting to see FTE reports, actually for not only the centers, but Hoopa, Garberville, and Eureka. And I don't think we've seen those this year yet, have we? So I was wondering how we were doing
We did.
here. So.
Just a few months ago, that I did provide an FTS report over the last 5 years and trends. It's called the Enrollment Trend Report. But we should be able to give more updates as the summer semester kicks off too.
And that was broken down by campus?
Yes, it did, by site and by campus, yes.
Okay.
And it was a trend over 5 years.
And
So it's in a former board packet?
Yes, it
probably?
is.
Okay.
Okay. Can you maybe tell me what month?
I don't know.
Sometime later.
Michelle can help us with that.
Other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to 4.5, legislative update.
I just want to point out here, I know there was a lot included in your packet, which was greatly cut down from the number of bills that they're monitoring right now. And I just left the ones in that I thought might be of interest. You can look them up at any time, as my cover sheet says, but what's of interest to me are the number of bonds or a number of bills out there that have to do, one, with facilities bond. There's a lot of need for a educational facilities bond to be on the ballot. The governor doesn't necessarily want to put one on the ballot, but we would all like for one to be on the ballot because everybody's in need for additional building and renovation. There's also a number of bills in the legislature right now regarding dual enrollment and concurrent students, and a lot of things there about saving taxpayers money if we didn't limit concurrent students to 11 units a semester and things like that. So there's a lot of bills out there. And then you may also have noticed that there's some bills out there about accreditation as far as whether or not we're going to remain with just one entity that can accredit community colleges in California. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. None of these have made it all the way through the system yet, so the next legislative report might be quite interesting.
Questions, comments? I have a question for President Smith. It almost seems like when I was reading this that the governor wants to turn facility management and expense over to districts and take it out of the state's hands and make us pass bonds in order to get updates, the way I was reading some of it.
I don't know, VP Lindsay, is that what you hear?
I think the way I've heard it, the spin is that the governor is using the categorical physical plant funds as a way to provide like a stopgap for a couple of years until they're ready to do a bond measure. But they're not, the governor's not supporting a school bond measure, and that physical plant categorical won't be enough to build new buildings or do major repairs. It'll be enough to do lots of smaller repairs, so it's a stopgap.
We'll move on to 4.6, student trustee Jones.
I have nothing to report at this time.
Thank you. We'll move on to 4.7, organizational reports. 4.7.1, academic senate report.
So
You'll remember at the beginning of the semester, we had the Student Success Summit, which was, had a great attendance. And one of the outcomes of that was a collaborative identification of areas for professional development for faculty and staff and management. And my Senate counterpart, Dan Calderwood, and I had a follow-up meeting with the faculty to go over what some of those identified areas of interest for professional development were. We gathered a little bit more information, and what we've been doing lately is creating a crosswalk between the top items that have been identified for faculty as areas of professional development and areas in our planning documents that seem to connect with those. And once we have that crosswalk done, what we'd like to do is to be able to bring that forward and show that the professional development suggestions that the faculty are making or the requests that we're making are actually rooted in our planning documents and our planning processes. We think that's good not just for planning, but also to demonstrate for the ACCJC that we're following through and taking our planning seriously. The other thing that's going on is we have lots of hiring committees working right now to hire full-time faculty. I think we have 9 positions that have been, are being recruited for in 8 committees. And the thing to think about is that every one of those committees has to have 3 full-time faculty. And because we only have 75, we've got about a third of our faculty serving on those hiring committees. Every one of those hiring committees also has to have an administrative representative. And there are administrative representatives on multiple committees. And the thing I think is worth reflecting on is that sometimes there will be 250 applications for one position. So they not only have to wait through all of those transcripts, all of those evaluations, all of those cover letters, all of those statements of teaching philosophy, but then they have to sit down and do successive interviews, phone interviews. And I heard of one committee doing interviews last Friday night to try to figure out who to bring to campus. So we should be really grateful to all of the staff and the administrators and the faculty who are serving in those committees, because they're doing really important work and they're doing it with integrity. And because we're hiring so many people, new full-time faculty, it's really going to define our college in a significant way going forward. Related to that, we're really pleased that we've been able to work with Dr. Snowflamer to bring back an initiative to create a new faculty orientation program, so that when we do get these faculty who come in next year and are going to become a part of our college community, that we welcome them in and we help them learn about CR and what it means to be a faculty member here. And we're looking forward to them having opportunities to meet with all of you and the others on campus. The other thing, the final thing that I'd like to mention is that the faculty have been reflecting on this transition that we're facing. We're really sad to see President Smith go, and we will always be grateful for all of the work and the leadership that she's provided. And we recognize that any time the institution goes through a transition, it's always going to be bumpy, no matter what that transition is. But there's a conviction, I think, among at least the faculty, and I'm sure the staff and managers and administrators as well, is that we're a much stronger institution today because of our work, because of your leadership, because of President Smith's leadership, her cabinet's leadership, and we're able to endure this transition and to be able to undertake it successfully. So I think there's a degree of confidence among the faculty that I haven't seen for a long time. And I'm grateful to, we all are grateful to all of your leadership and everybody who's made that possible. So thank you. That's my report.
Thank you. Questions? We will move on to 4.7.2 CRFO report.
I promise you I didn't talk with John Johnson about this at all before I wrote it. Yeah, I wanted to I'm going to reiterate one of the things that he just said right away. And first I want to say, from my perspective as an officer of our faculty organization, that the college is strong. I think we are a unified institution and that we're working together across the constituencies and that we now understand the path ahead. And I believe your leadership has largely been responsible for helping us to make out that path. I also need to express my gratitude for your decision to support us and all the rest of the college's constituencies in the process of restoring our wages. That was a practically audible sigh of relief among the faculty that our trustees had recognized the value in supporting us, not just monetarily, but morally as well. So I really want to thank you all for that. You've heard quite a bit over this past academic year about acceleration of developmental English and math courses at our college. I teach one of those classes, English 102, a course that moves students through pre-collegiate writing and into transfer-level English in just 4 units rather than 9. In my class this semester, we focused our entire term on a simple, single question: what does it mean to do the right thing? We explored the ways of arriving at conclusions to complex problems and ethical conundrums. And the students quickly realized that thinking and acting critically is no easy task. And those of us who choose to serve in leadership positions like you all especially know how complex arriving at a conclusion about the best path can be. I know I feel the weight each time I am personally asked to do so, so from my perspective, I wanted to say the faculty supports you all. We know that you've been wrestling with many difficult decisions over the years, and that we support your decisions, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you. 4.7.3, classified report.
Crystal had to leave early. She apologized. She was here, but she had an appointment.
Thank you. 4.7.4, manager council report.
Thank you. Many members of the Management Council have been very busy in preparing both for priority registration for summer and fall, which just began yesterday. And even though the school year hasn't ended, we're continuing to be very busy with next year. So preparing for next year and still trying to finish this year and do all that. So that's, people think that things slow down, but they never do. We want to thank you as well for approving the salary restoration today. As you mentioned, we were all willing to sacrifice for the district when the times were tough, so we do appreciate the restoration of most of these funds since our financial picture has improved. With the better financial picture, we are also looking forward to new managers coming on board after your approval today for the Director of the Library and Technology Enhanced Instruction and the Public Safety Manager positions. These positions will assist managers in these areas who have been overloaded and improve services to our campus community, so we appreciate that as well. We hope that additional hires will be considered as the budget hopefully continues to improve and these workloads are taken into consideration in various areas. We also want to tell you that we value the opportunity to provide feedback on the presidential candidates. We've appreciated the opportunity to do so. We hope, as you consider your, or continue your discussion this afternoon in closed session, that you continue to seriously, I think I'm saying the words over, saying the same thing, that you consider seriously our considerations and our input. As we all, I think, have agreed, we want the best person to move us forward, the person that's going to have the skills and the background to be able to do so. And we don't feel the need to settle at this time with someone who hasn't received full constituency report or support. So we hope that you will continue to take that into consideration as you discuss this afternoon. So thank you. That's our report.
Questions, comments? Thank you. I will move on 4.8. Administrative reports, 4.8.1, President Smith.
I just wanted to add to my written report that we do have another meeting set up next week that just came into play yesterday with Pelican Bay. And so we're moving forward again with the new law that was passed that we can offer classes on site and get apportionment for those. They can be closed to the public. So we're moving forward with that, going up there to talk with the warden about it. So the only other thing I would highlight was I decided to include my NorCal CEO conference notes for your enjoyment because I thought you would like the one that said that the CEO's job is to make the board look good.
Mm-hmm.
So, from Pam Fisher, yes.
Oh, wonderful.
The foundation's work is to earn money.
That's true.
Or bring money in, something like that.
That's right. The only,
I like
yes.
a couple of those comments.
Yes. I'd be glad to answer questions.
I hope you learned well, Kathy.
I learned well, yeah.
Okay. Questions, comments?
I would just like to comment that in spite of the fact that these are, little thumbnail comments on things that were made, that I learned a lot from that report. particularly, or at least I would mention, the section on the system update, because in that little list of bullets is so much information about what direction things are going in and what we need to be doing to follow that. So I just really, there were a number of areas where that was true, but I really appreciated the report.
Great, thank you.
Trustee Mullery?
Yeah, just a follow-up on the Pelican Bay announcement. Do you have any idea what type of enrollment we would be looking at, enrollment increase?
Restricted.
No, I don't. I will say that we have had a little boost in energy provided by a new member of the Board of Governors who actually heads a nonprofit group, which is anti-recidivism group. And he went up there with his volunteers a couple of weeks ago and said that when they ask any inmate who was interested in pursuing a college education, if now we can come on campus and they don't have to do it by correspondence. Mm-hmm. He said that they had over 120 students show up that ended that suggested they were seriously interested. He even talked about I think there were 20-some in the SHU, the secure housing unit, that were interested as well. And so we were talking about the opportunities and how you could best reach those students if they're locked up on 24-hour basis. So I see that there is definitely potential up there. And with the new law, I think we have an opportunity. And he is helping open some of the doors up there as well. Being on the Board of Governors and knowing the, what's the state guy's name, the state director of all institutions, prisons in the state. So they're personal friends, so there's some connections. So.
I mean, I just think it could be such a classic win-win. I mean, not only for our district, but for the inmates who would have this opportunity.
Oh, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
I
We
really
asked the.
Thank you for pursuing it.
Oh, you're welcome. We asked the question when we were up there last year about if the students, if they hopefully will be students, if the inmates are in here for life, you know, why is the warden and the deputy warden, why are they pursuing education as they have been? And, you know, the answer was just if they're busy studying, busy learning something, then they just don't get into the trouble they get into otherwise. So everybody's very supportive of us. We've had a I don't know, just a stall in the process because they lost their education director at Pelican Bay. And now they have replaced her with someone else who we've not met, so we will meet them next week.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Could I just,
Trustee Matthews?
I would just like to add from my own experience up there and visits out there and looking at those programs that I really support the effort to do this also. And a reminder that in spite of the security level, et cetera, many of those inmates are not there for life. They will be leaving. And if they're leaving with some education and tools and skills and belief in some possibility other than the ones they've taken advantage of in the past, then everybody's better off.
Well, and they have instituted some sort of system that gives you fewer years or more likelihood of parole if you move up the education ladder. I don't know exactly all the details. It was explained to us last year, but there is an advantage to them, too, if they're eligible for parole.
I'll just make a quick comment that we probably always should consider the employees and the staff. Trustee Matthews might be able to point us to that number, but I hear it's close to 800 or 900 employees at that prison. That there's probably a lot of opportunities for individuals looking for advancement to get out of there, because I understand their turnover is very high.
I don't know about the turnover. They have a lot of employees, correctional and non-correctional. And there are jobs for which a two-year degree is required, or for which advancement is required. And I think there are staff who take advantage of that. I'm sure that there are things that we tried in the past and could do again to kind of make that access more user-friendly to people on the kind of schedules that they're on. But that's definitely true. And many of them already are students at CR.
President Smith?
Well, and I was focusing my comments on inmates because of the new Senate bill that was passed and our ability to earn apportionment revenue on those. But the other avenue that we have been discussing with them for several months is doing a survey for their employees as well to see what classes they would like and actually teaching some of those classes on site as well.
Thank you for the report. 4.8.2, Vice President of Instruction and Student Development Report. President Smith.
How about Vice President
Thank you.
My only comment is to remind the board that we have a scholarship reception tomorrow that starts at 1 o'clock, and you are cordially invited to attend. It'll be in this place in the boardroom tomorrow from 1 to 2. So please show up and say congrats to our scholarship recipients and thank you to our scholarship donors.
Thank you. 4.8.3, Vice President of Administrative Services Report.
If you have any questions.
Questions? Thank you for the report. Future agenda item and request for information from trustees. Seeing none, we will now move back into the second portion of our closed session. And at this time, we would ask for any public comments on any of the items to be discussed on closed session, which are listed on the agenda. Seeing none, we will take a 10-minute break, and the board will reconvene